Hi, this is Liqian Ren, Director of Modern Alpha Wisdom Tree ETFs. Welcome to China of Tomorrow podcast series, where we navigate China, India, Japan, and the broader emerging markets with members of Wisdom Tree and other industry leaders. Hi, today is August 20th, 2024, end of summer. Today I'm going to quickly comment on China's loan prime rate, which was kept the same, and also U.S.-China top finance work group, which I don't think people's expectation of those should be too high, and also some rumors about President Xi's whereabouts in some of the political intrigue. First, I think we've written really extensively, and if you listen to our podcast in the last 2 years, we generally have had the baseline that China right now at least is not yet embarking much substantial stimulus. On the other hand, it does have an annual economic goal. So like this year, the goal is 5%. Lots of people have questions about how the 5% going to come. But even if there's data manipulation to be able to say there's 5%, the government still needs to do something. So the government does do a little bit to try to make this year, not too bad. So for example, you'll see housing, there's a little bit loosening. Again, only a little bit, not a lot. Actually, a lot of Chinese policies are behind the curve. If you use the US definition of behind the curve, even the house price is down 30% for many areas. There are many cities actually still have restrictions on buying houses still in place in Beijing, Shanghai, and top tier cities as well. On the other hand, the smaller tier cities are now giving some incentives, like if you buy a house, you get a city citizenship, which is called a hukou in China, which used to be very valuable, but now 30 or 40 years later, it's not that valuable anymore. And I know this by heart because I myself was born a rural citizen and then faced significant discrimination, really systematic discrimination, which still exists. So you can see that a lot of this is economically, you will say that China probably should, give a lot more money to the poorer people, to the unemployed. But politically, it's not yet there. And I think you cannot just dismiss easily that it's because of Communist Party. This really, for this economic situation, it's really the first time China has faced after China has significant private economy. This is really the first big leverage, I would say, leverage cost. You can see leverage or housing bubble. It's all similar, but essentially this crisis is really the first one for China to face when China has substantial private economy. And I think many typical operations in China, like physical stimulus, monetary stimulus, you still need a political buy-in. If you really talk to a typical Chinese, many of them are not very happy that the government spending money to pop up real estate. So again, you cannot dismiss these. I know a lot of people will say, hey, China, the public opinion is manipulated. Yes, the public opinion is manipulated. In some way, it's also manipulated in the US, but probably, a little bit more manipulated in China. But still, there are true public sentiment that's not yet in supportive of significant stimulus. And this is actually similar to during COVID. A lot of people completely put COVID zero on the party. Yes, the party is behind it, but actually there are significant, I would say, majority people who support the COVID zero for a long time. And you cannot dismiss that sentiment quickly, just put everything on the party. So I think it's very important when you look at China and why we been saying that, so far the stimulus has been a little bit, but not a lot. And that is what we still see on the ground. So the loan prime rate is, it's quite important rates that typical loans in China got anchored. And then there is also the U.S.-China Finance Working Group, essentially top treasury people talking to China's PBOC or Minister of Finance people. I'm not a political scientist, but I think in the last 2 or 3 years, many of my assessment has been slightly above average, I would say. Not the best, probably. Some of the best are from some of my friends who were probably not in public assessing it. But I think people really should realize that the current situation of China's U.S. China working relationship can best be explained as not going to the worst. So I don't think there's much going to be accomplished. Talking is good. It's always good to talk because then you avoid, the worst. But in terms of what can be accomplished, it's very little. You can look at some of the public release put it out by both from the U.S. side and from the China side, and you can, see the kind of people who are attending who generally cannot make a final decision without the top leadership or their direct. So I wouldn't put much high expectation on those meetings at all. Again, I can be wrong, but I'm willing to admit wrong when I'm wrong, and we pretty honest on Twitter on things and in our podcasts and blogs, and we were wrong. But we also the baseline is, I think, for U.S. China, you really shouldn't expect much, regardless who becomes a president either. And the third thing is about, President Xi. He's been off the headlines for about 3 weeks. There are a huge amount of rumors. This is typical when a top leader of a country like China. I mean, similar in the U.S., right? Like if President Biden not coming out, then people question about his ability to perform. So I think obviously this is important, but it's really beyond our scope to research and speculate. So most, we don't really have a huge team, political team, to look at the science. But I think for a lot of these situations, I think the baseline is still that generally Chinese leaders get really good health care, and if they are careful, they live long. I think that it should be the baseline. So maybe there's some, in the middle, some things, but ultimately it doesn't change the baseline. We are not in a position of, predicting what's going to happen politically next day. So I felt for a lot of these rumors, unless there's really credible source, not on Twitter, a lot of Twitter rumors, but generally Wall Street Journal, Financial Times, and China's Caixin, they may, perform a little bit lag, but generally, they have slightly higher quality news from these top news places, and Bloomberg as well. So I would say, unless one has very credible, very insightful access, then I think a lot of these top leadership rumors really serves more like an input, like, that's what people are thinking, but not necessarily what they're thinking is true. But their thinking itself does influence policy, so that you cannot dismiss that there are people who have these kinds of views, even though the views may not be, or the views, the thing they believe may not be quite correct. Okay, so hopefully summer coming to close. There's always day-to-day significant things happening in China. We just put out a blog, summarize the kind of things we said in the last, I would say 2 months, on the China's planner meeting, focus on manufacturing. We also mentioned that in specific industries, for example, we use a battery as an example, then the Chinese companies return and a second is not that different from the US. So when you go into specific industry, then its macroeconomic impact on the equity is less. The industry force takes a bigger, particularly for the private Chinese companies. So I think again we are in this situation where China's macro. On the other hand, during the yen uh, carry trade big crisis, I wouldn't say crisis, big event, China's equity has not gone down as much, mainly because it's been down for so long and for so low already, and it's so in some way China's equity can serve some hedge purposes when there's a huge international event. So I think ultimately, whether you take on China equity, a lot depends on your time horizon, your purpose, and how much risk you're willing to, take. Thank you for listening, and then give us feedback on the Twitter. I'm on Twitter, and you can also leave messages on our company communication channels, and we hope to bring more really probably I would say we hope to explain the situation happening in China with the mind obviously toward how to see some of the news from some of the noises. Thank you.